Hello my friends, today I'm going to show you my work that led to building this little diorama for Bradley, so let's get to work. You've probably seen the way I prepare bases for models, so for some it won't be anything new, but I'm sure there will be some who haven't seen me do it yet, so grab a drink and spend a few minutes watching this episode. As you can see, I used a thick photo frame from which I removed unnecessary elements. After gluing the floor, I cut out the appropriate walls from hard balsa planks and glued them into the frame. Soft pads on the bottom are always welcome and protect the table surface from scratching. The styrofoam was cut to size to fill the space. The hot wire cutter is the best option to make it accurate and with no flying particles of foam. Once I had the contoured shape, I started building the terrain. First I used the material for creating rocks, which is available from Modeler's World. All you need is a little PVA glue and you can build rock structures. I didn't try to fit every piece perfectly because I planned to use universal mud and ground paste to fill all the empty spaces. This is a great solution because you will save a lot of time. It's very easy to process and a little water is enough to dilute it. Leaving it for a few hours will allow the mass to harden. After it dried, the whole thing was painted with dark grey paint. This shows exactly what the rock wall looks like after it dries. Everything came out the way I wanted. When painting such a surface, it's worth doing it from different sides to reach all the nooks and crannies. Now I started rubbing the rocks with different shades of grey. I started with darker and finished with lighter ones. The next shade was weathering paint, dark rust, which I applied in different places. But before I sprayed it, I covered the rocks with acrylic paint thinner so that the rust color would spread better. Of course, after applying it, I used thinner again to better lay down the paint. A moment of using the accelerator sped up the drying process. To emphasize the deep cracks, I used dark brown weathering paint. I did exactly the same as before with the rust color. Now I applied some dark green wash to the lower layers of the rocks. This added a subtle bloom to the surfaces. I put some dust on, the same as on the model. This slightly dulled the sharpness of the rocks, but it was enough to gently rub them again with light grey paint to regain the look I had created earlier. In a small plastic container I mixed some mountain gravel and urban pigment. This mixture was sprinkled on the rocks. Of course I applied some glue beforehand and immediately after sprinkling I strengthened the joint with a few additional drops. And now is the best moment to mention my wonderful patrons. The people who helped me the most are Bulldog09, Christopher Obarski, Dan Dibua, Dan Majchak, Hans Zap, Karsten Ikedi and Steve Ankin. But the people listed just now are also my great patrons. Please don't forget that you can be one of them. And I realize it's not easy these days, but if you have a few bucks you could drop in my cup, that would be great. Thanks! Oh, and one more thing. Remember that if you join for free you probably won't be able to view my work. Better try the 7 days free trial, which will give you many more possibilities. Once the small stones were already holding on to the surface quite well, I planted some grass using ready-made tufts produced by BSM, which is Beers Scale Modeling. Now it's time for some work on the road. First I marked its width and edges. About 13 cm will be perfect to fit a vehicle. On the other hand, it's not too wide so as not to take up the entire surface of the diorama. To make the road I used a ready-made product from Modeler's World, which I spread evenly on the surface. It takes some time because the product has the right consistency, which is not ultra dry but it's not liquid either, so laying it out requires a dozen or so minutes and an even tool. But the effect is very realistic and after 2 hours you can continue working calmly because the surface is hard enough. As you probably noticed earlier, I marked a fragment that I also decided to remove and make a small slope. After removing pieces of styrofoam, I applied the paste and shaped the terrain. Leaving this fragment to dry, I started painting the cacti. This is a great product from Pimp My Miniatures. You can find a link to the producer's website in the description of this video. Even though I won't be using all of the cacti in this diorama, I painted them in preparation for future projects, starting with a dark green, gradually lightening to a yellow-green on the tops of each plant. After applying these colors I added a dark green wash and finally dry brushed. I re-drilled each of the cacti at the base and glued copper wire to make it easier to position on the diorama. There is also a little wash around all of the cacti just to make some shadow on the gravel. By this time the asphalt had dried and I could start preparing the stripes on the edges of the road. I marked them with masking tape and started painting with ivory color. I used the tapping method so that the line would be uneven and look like it was painted many years ago. The result was exactly as I had planned. After setting up the model I noticed that the asphalt surface was a little lower than it should be in one place. I decided that the best solution would be to put down an additional layer to simulate surface repair. Fortunately, Modeler's World has several different types of asphalt in their offer. After determining the range of masking tape, I applied the product with a darker color which is supposed to look like newer asphalt poured a few months earlier. Thanks to the masking tape I have even edges which I fill in with thin pieces of black milliput. It looks very similar to what you can see on the roads all over the world. The milliput line doesn't have to be perfect and even better if it's not. A little water is enough to smooth it out. After rubbing with your finger the job is done. Now all you have to do is paint this part a very dark grey. Preparing dust and tracks rubbed by car wheels is easiest with an airbrush and weathering paint. Then to add more effects I spread the pigment on the surface using a wide and soft brush which is ideal for this purpose. I didn't fix the pigment in any way. The surface of the asphalt is rough enough that the powder stuck to it sufficiently. In addition to the pigment I also added the same mixture of gravel and pigment that I had previously placed on the rocks and roadside. Now I added a little glue so that all the particles would stick where I had placed them. Additionally, I prepared two road signs from Plus model and glued them to the asphalt using CE glue. The colorful signs added a nice variety to the rocks background of the diorama. I'm slowly approaching to the end of my work. It's time to paint the walls black. 2 layers of acrylic paint did the job. This is a proven method that I have been using for years. Additionally, I prepared a stencil for making the inscription. On the one hand, I saved time and money on ordering a sticker, on the other hand, the bold letters gave the best effect. Wanting to keep them in the style of the road lines, I painted them with a sponge. I quickly fixed all the imperfections with black paint. The last step on the base was to prepare small photos of Bradley and stick them to the walls of the base. To tell the truth, I did it for 2 reasons. The first is of course the aesthetic value, and the second is the need to cover the glue leaking onto the balsa surface, which is impossible to remove despite sanding, and its traces are visible even after painting. Unfortunately, shit happens sometimes. Okay, the base is ready, but I still have something to do on the model. I added 3D printed rings from ammunition belt, which are a perfect complement to the previously arranged shells. These small elements are great, and I'm glad that thanks to the help of viewers I managed to determine where they should be. Contrary to appearances, in the films of shooting Bradley you can't see exactly or at all where these connectors fall out. But now I'm sure that they are where they should be. Of course, I glued them with the same glue as the gravel on the diorama. Finally, a few pencil rubbings and I consider this topic closed. One of the last touches on the model was a little rust on the gun barrel, which I paint with weathering paints using the wet on wet method. After drying, I have a great color scheme that perfectly reflects the wear of this element, exactly as on real vehicles. Oh, and I forgot about the figures. I added a crew from Mini Art with resin heads from Alpine. This completely changes the look of the model, and the human factor does the job. Besides, a model always looks better with figures, right? So right now you can see the final effect of my work. Thanks for watching. If you had a good time watching it, please click like, write a comment even to say hello, and subscribe the channel for more videos with my projects. As I said before, you can also consider joining to my Patreon group, because your support is highly appreciated and helps me do what I do here at coldemonspl. Thanks to this, I will try to give you some interesting content to keep you informed and entertained. And a short note for collectors, all my models are for sale. Get in touch with me and we will discuss what you need. In the next video I'm going to present some building process or maybe even more, but don't know exactly what it will be. So there is no other option but to stay tuned. That's all for today, see you next time, cheers!